This is Sandy with Sandy Cogdell Designs, formerly a little bit of glitter. This past summer, I decided that I would abandon my A Little Bit of Glitter blog site just because it was a little bit cost prohibitive and I was having problems with Facebook. They didn't like that title. They said it was a violation of their community rules. So I guess they're all protecting us from glitter. Anyway, it's been a while since I've done a video, and today I am doing one for a Lawn Fawn challenge called Christmas Critters. And I thought it would be fun to do a card with Christmas dough and have my little mice, my favorite of course, making some Christmas cookies. So let's get started. I've stamped my images using Memento Tuxedo black ink on Express It blending card. That is the particular paper I like to use best for Copic blending. I've used it for a number of years. It is a little bit spendy, so believe me, I save every little piece I have and stamp on it. That way I don't have to replace it as often. The images on this particular piece that I'm coloring right now are from Sprinkled with Joy. In order to get the sentiment on my little oven door, I used Henry's Build-A-Sentiment. I used the Christmas part from that. And then for the Here's Some Dough, that is from Where You Been, or How's It Been, not Where You Been, How's It Been Money Add-On. And I had to clip the Here's Some Dough into two pieces so that I could make it work for this particular sentiment. I actually do that fairly often in order to make sentiments work. I know some people don't like clipping their stamps, but I've really never had a problem doing that and making them work if I wanted to use them in their original condition. So for the cookie dough on this particular project, the colors I'm using are E31, E33, and E35. I use that on the edges of the little cookies, and then I come back in a little bit later with some red and greens to give them that frosting look. For the little cookie cutter at the top, I have cookie cutters that actually have like a red plastic on the top, and then the actual cookie cutter part is a metal. So that's kind of how I decided I would color these. Now the little star one that I'm working on, I totally messed that up. So I will eventually abandon that and stamp it off camera and color it because I still want it in my card. Now the oven is a very big piece to color. I personally have never seen a Christmas green oven with red dials, but that doesn't mean they don't exist. And in fact, I would love to have one, probably just around the Christmas season. I think I'd probably get tired of that color combination, probably by the middle of January. Anyway, I've colored this oven for other cards several different times, and I usually use a bluish green, kind of that retro-y looking turquoise, but this time we're going to go with a green. Anyway, when I do Copic coloring, sometimes I will color the entire base area with my lightest color and then come back in with my two other colors and kind of blend them in. For me, that just works better, but I am trying to do just like the areas where I want that color and then blend them in that area, if that makes any sense. Anyway, for the greens on this particular card, I am using Copic Colors G21, G24, and G28. The reds that I used for the cookie cutters and the dials are R24, R27, and R29. My little burners, my aluminum pieces, my little handle are colored with colors C0, C2, and C4. I didn't want to color in the whole window on my little oven door, so I took a blue marker, it's B000, and just kind of stroked in some little streaks that would kind of give the illusion of it being glass. And then I just colored in my little cookie and my little candy cane. Didn't spend a whole lot of time on those because they're so little. And then I use the same type of technique for my little shaker bottle. I just do the bottle with just a little bit of blue blending, and then I went back in and just dotted some red and green dots just to give it the look of it holding some little sparkles in it. Okay, now I am pretty much done with this card and these images, and we'll move on to the images from A Creature is Stirring. I'm using all the same colors for the reds and greens for these particular little friends, except for the mice. I did want them to be a different brown than the cookie doughs and the cookies. So I'm using a blend of, let's see, E30, which is the little belly on the mice, and then E53, E55, and E57. I'm just going to blend those out like I normally do. The insides of the ears, I totally forgot to color them right now. So later in the video, you'll see me going back in and getting some color in those. And the color I used for those was R20 and R22. And the poor little mouse with the little oven gloves on, I messed him up. So again, he will be colored off camera and added in a little bit later. Off camera, I also decided to do another one of the little platters and a little cake and holly berry from that same stamp set. Once I started kind of putting things together, I realized that I needed just a few more elements to kind of fill in my background. So you won't see me coloring those, but they definitely were colored off camera. And again, I use the same colors as I did for everything else. For my background, I cut out a piece of Lawn Fawn's favorite flannel in that kind of beige color. I'm doing a slimline card just because I need all that room to put my little people on. Not people, but my little mice on. So I'm going to blend the edges with a little bit of antique linen distress oxide ink. I'm also going to cut out the little garland from Noble Fur cardstock. And I'm using the Christmas garland die. Then I'm going to go back in with some Rustic Wilderness Distress Oxide ink and kind of touch up those edges. I do that on most of the things I die cut just because it adds a little bit of dimension. The little bows are also from the Christmas garland die set. I'm going to put a little bit of aged mahogany Distress Oxide ink on those edges just to add a little bit something to them. And then for the floor, I use the light brown wood grain cardstock, and I'm going to touch up those edges with a teeny bit of Vintage Photo Distress Oxide ink. Now that I've got everything blended, I'm going to go ahead and glue on my little piece of floor at the very bottom of my card. And then I'm going to start adhering my little garland pieces. I'm going to use my ruler to kind of center that first one right in the center of the card. And since the card is 8.5 inches, the center is going to be 4 1/4. And I'll just get those little pieces of garland adhered on. And then I will put my little red bows on that as soon as I get those done. I am a very big glue person. I just like to use it more so than adhesive tapes. That does come with its problems though, because if you let that glue dry, you're kind of stuck with what you've got unless you can get it peeled off. And you'll see me do that a little bit further down in the video just because I didn't get some things adhered right the first time. But again, I personally prefer to use the craft glue. Using the Money Pocket die, I've cut out the base piece of just plain old white cardstock. For this particular card and putting this die on it, I don't think you could really use the pocket for a gift card. I mean, you could, but it would extend quite a bit above the card, and I don't know how that would work if you were planning on mailing it or putting it in an envelope. I was planning on putting cash in it, so I wasn't too concerned with the depth of the card and the pocket. So now what I'm doing is I've cut a piece of the printed paper the same size as the pocket, and I'm just clipping off the little tabs that are on the side because I want to use that paper to cover the white cardstock pocket. I'm also putting on a little piece of the wood grain cardstock just so that it follows the floor line. And I'll get those adhered on the pocket. Now you're going to see where I really start struggling with the glue because I didn't get it on exactly where I wanted it the first time. So I'm going to wind up peeling it off and trying to replace it to get it just right. In retrospect, I probably would have done the whole pocket piece out of the pattern paper and then put on just the floor piece. But this is kind of how we're going to go with it. So now I'm going to get that glued on right in the center of that slimline card. And then I'm going to glue on my little oven. See how that gift card just kind of sticks way out of there? It just doesn't really work that well. Once I had the pocket and the oven adhered to the card, I didn't really like the way that the white cardstock was showing at the bottom where the floor is. So I just took a Copic marker and kind of just carefully inked in that white just to kind of take away from the distraction of it being there. All right, now we're getting ready to put our little scene together. For this mixing bowl, I just glued a bunch of pieces together, kind of covering it up. I had thought about slitting it and sliding in my utensils, but that was just a lot of extra work. So now what I'm going to do is just kind of play around with where I want my little friends and how I want them to show up on my card. As you can see, there's my little green platter with the cake on top. I also had colored the little mouse that's sitting down, thinking that she would be perfect to put on the cookie dough. She kind of doesn't make the final cut in the card. So this is just kind of my process of setting up a scene. I like to keep things kind of high and then things in the foreground. I think it just adds a little bit of dimension. I could have popped up some of these pieces, but I felt with the pocket from the card, that was enough dimension. And I just didn't want it to get too crazy puffy. So that's kind of what I went with on this particular card. Now you can see that I've got everything pretty much in place. I'm going to take my marker, my R20 and R22 marker, and color in those little ears on the mice, also their little noses, and give them some little cheeks. I also am going to do a little bit of highlighting with a white gel pen. I'm still working on that technique. I just don't feel like I have that very well. But again, everything takes practice. You'll also note that my little cake with the holly berries is kind of hovering above the green platter. And this is one of the times I regret using glue, because now I'm going to have to peel that off and hopefully not destroy my entire background that I worked so hard on, and re-glue it. Luckily, um, it worked out fine this time. For a final touch on my die cut garland pieces, I just went back in with a Copic marker and kind of made stems and little lines to give those just a little bit of dimension. I also used a red marker to kind of highlight the center of that bow. Okay, that pretty much finishes this card up. I've got a few bills tucked in the top. I left them sticking out just for photograph purchases. You could stick those down just a little bit farther and be able to put this card in an envelope and send it off if you'd like. Thank you so much for stopping by today, and I hope you have an amazing holiday season. Bye-bye.